That's great. Thanks so much for that introduction, Stephen. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for this session. Just give me a second. I'm going to share some slides and we will get started. But beginning, so understanding recruitment, how to think about skills. So this session is that's the name of the session, and the session is designed to cover some advice on how to go about thinking about the skills that you have and why that's important when you're job hunting. And we're going to start by sharing some advice on how you can get a better understanding of your own skills. And then we're going to look at ways that recruiters might ask for skills when they write their job adverts and give you some tips on how to unpick those job adverts so you can get a clearer understanding of what they are really looking for. We're then going to talk about how you can go about matching your skills and experience to what recruiters are looking for. And throughout this, we'll talk about some of the areas where, in our experience, some of the autistic people that we've worked with might find this process challenging and share some insight that will help. So obviously this session has got an autistic and neurodivergent lens to it, but a lot of the tips and things that we're going to be discussing are relevant to all. So hopefully for everybody on the session today, the insider information that we're going to share is going to help you feel a bit more confident when you're applying for jobs and help you find it easier to make stronger applications. So before we get into the content of the session, my colleague Hayley and I would like to introduce ourselves. So just so you know a bit more about us and are confident that we know a little bit about what we're talking about in this space. So my name is Sharon Kant and I am the recruitment marketing specialist at Auticon, and I've been here since February of this year. And my background is working in student and graduate employment. So I spent quite a lot of my career working at the University of Edinburgh in the career service there. And I'll pass over to Hayley.
Hi everyone, my name's Hayley Hamilton and I'm a job coach at auticon and I'm based in Edinburgh. So I've been working for auticon for about 8 months now. And I also have a background in supported employment as well as a master's in business psychology.
Thank you, Hayley. Okay. So who is Auticon? So Auticon is a social enterprise and a tech consultancy, and we're on a mission to improve the employment prospects of autistic people and neurodivergent people more generally. So as Steve mentioned at the beginning, we are an autistic majority company. We're actually the largest autistic majority organisation in the world now, which is pretty exciting. And we exclusively hire autistic people as our tech consultants. And then we share our experience of attracting, recruiting, hiring, and onboarding our neurodivergent talent with our clients through different pieces of training and audits and workshops, so that clients and more workplaces generally can become neurodivergent friendly and neuro-inclusive, like we are as an employer. So we like to summarize that with this little slogan here, say Auticon, we make neurodiversity work at work. So it's all around about looking at the benefits of neurodiversity and tapping into those benefits that can be brought to workplaces. So in terms of recruitment process, we'll get onto the content of what we're going to talk about today. The first thing to acknowledge is that recruitment processes are difficult, can be difficult to understand and navigate, and this isn't your fault. Workplaces are getting better and supported by people like us who are trying to support organisations to be more neurodivergent friendly. But there's still some way to go. So this illustration on the screen at the moment is an illustration by an autistic illustrator that we worked with, Megan Rhiannon, and it kind of encapsulates the confusion that recruitment processes can sometimes generate. So let's start to look at how we can simplify things for you. So what skills do you have? So a simple way to think about the job hunting process is to view it as a matching process. So on one side, you have got candidates who have got all different skill sets, and then on the other side, you have got employers who are trying to find people or the one person with a particular set of skills. And then in the middle of that, you have got a process that allows the employers to narrow down the candidates to find the person who most closely matches the skills that they are looking for. And the first stage of that process is generally the job advert. But before you get to that stage of trying to decide which jobs to apply for, it's really helpful for yourself if you can have a super clear understanding of the skills that you currently have. So asking yourself that question, what skills do you have? So that's why we would recommend as the first step is doing a skills audit. So this isn't about writing your CV or applying to one particular job. This is something that you do before that stage, and it's about collating a kind of inclusive document that you can keep and reflect on, that has a full picture of all of your skills and experiences. And you can do it in any format you like that suits you. So it might be in list format or sticky notes or a mind map, whatever you think is going to work best for you. And a good practice to get into when you're looking at this document and pulling it all together is to think about putting some evidence for each skill set beside it. So if you write down a particular skill, think about an example of where and how you have used that skill in the past. And when you're compiling this list of skills, it's really good to think as widely as possible about everything that you've done and how you've done it. So you can be including things from education, from previous work, if you have any, from volunteering experiences, from your educational experiences. Maybe if you're at university, did you work as part of a student society? Your hobbies, any groups that you support with, really any type of experience is valid to include when you're thinking about your skills. So the aim is to build up a really complete picture of all of your skills and experiences, and then you have got that as a basis to pick and choose from when you need to. So on this slide, we'll see that we've got some soft and hard skills. So you might want to start with looking at some of these kind of lists. So you might want to start with a standard long list of skills and think, okay, what do I have? What do I not have? Or you might want to look at the kind of roles that you're interested in and start to pick out from those roles the skills that you see frequently being requested. It's up to you. You might want to just start by doing a general kind of reflection exercise about yourself and thinking about all your different skills and experiences and different areas that you feel confident in. One thing to be aware of is that this might seem a bit daunting, and particularly if you're then looking at a long list of skills, you might start to think, oh, I don't have that, I don't have that. Nobody has all of these skills. That's absolutely okay. So it might give you ideas of skills you want to start to build up more of, or it might be okay just to pass one by and say, I don't have that skill. That's okay. I've got other skills instead. So yeah, when we go look at the soft skills and hard skills that we've got on the slide here, for example, soft skills are more of a description of kind of personality or behavioral traits, whereas hard skills are more about the technical knowledge and training that you might have. The terms hard and soft skills have come in for some criticism in recent years. Some think that that indicates that one is better than the other. I wouldn't get hung up on thinking about how you categorize the skills. I would just say if you find it helpful to look at them in this way, splitting them into soft skills and hard skills, do that. If there's a different way you want to categorize them that you think would be helpful, do that instead, or just keep them as one long list if you prefer to do it that way. When you are compiling this list, it's really helpful to be as specific as possible about the skills that you have. So for example, under hard skills here, we've got coding listed. We would definitely be encouraging you to be explicit about the different coding languages that you know. And the same with video editing, for example, there. Make a list of the different video editing tools that you have used. For soft skills, it can also be useful to break it down a bit further. So for example, communication skills is on the list here, but you might want to break that down into both verbal and written communication, and maybe you have skills in one and not in the other, or maybe even parts of those skills. So with verbal communication, for example, you might want to make a note that you are really strong at presenting at events, but you struggle in meeting. So you're not going to talk about how you struggle in meeting conversation and meeting scenarios, but you just don't put that onto your list of skills. So you can be quite specific when you're talking about verbal and written communication in particular, about giving examples of the type of verbal and written communication that you have strong skills in. And for anybody on the call that is autistic or neurodivergent, this might be a good place to start thinking about the particular skills or strengths that come as part of your neurodivergent profile. So I'll hand over to Hayley to talk through the next few slides.
Thanks, Sharon. So at AuticOn, we really do value the strengths of each individual that comes on board to work for us. And we, as part of our social mission and kind of how we operate, we obviously do recognise that many autistic individuals bring their own set of unique strengths to the table, all of which are highly valuable to any employer. So we would really say to really don't be afraid to highlight your own unique strengths throughout the recruitment process. Autistic people often have cognitive strengths such as attention to detail, sustained attention, heightened imagination and creativity, superior autobiographical memory, and kind of instinctive analytical abilities and kind of trend spotting or pattern recognition. And this is by no means an exhaustive list, and obviously each person will have their own individual kind of strengths. But what we did want to highlight in today's session is that about 93% of our clients that we work with said our auticon consultants made valuable kind of professional contributions to their projects by delivering kind of greater accuracy, an alternative perspective and ideas, providing a more innovative approach, and also kind of increased efficiency. And in addition to that, about 86% of our clients that we work with said that they believe that working with an auticon consultant positively impacted the culture of their team through kind of clearer communication, better teamwork, and increased empathy. Now, this just shows, I suppose, the valuable impact autistic employees can bring to not only their teams, but organisations as a whole. Just simply by being yourself. So have confidence in your skills and really bring that into your CV, your application, and your interview. Next slide, please, Sharon. So the next stage is skills decoding. So hopefully we've given you kind of some ideas now about how you can really start to build up a really good record of your own skills. And this next stage is really to develop a particular job hunting skill that is kind of decoding job adverts, so that you start to get used to kind of unpicking what skills the recruiter is really looking for. Now, as we kind of alluded to earlier, recruiters don't always make this as clear as they could. And this is something that we do try and work on with our clients who we're supporting to be more neuro-inclusive. But the reality is you're going to encounter all sorts of job adverts written in all kinds of different ways. So to start this kind of process, we're going to look at a few job ads together now. So getting to the real meaning of job ads can actually be really complicated in itself. We have two examples here of what you might come across when job hunting. And as you can see, both ads are looking for a lot in their potential employee, with 11 and 9 requirements respectively. And this is a lot, and it's something that we always advise our clients to cut down on. The reality is that not all of the skills advertised will actually be essential to the role. So we can see, for example, kind of excellent communication, and this may actually be a very small part of the role, but is kind of a generic skill that employers do like to have on kind of job ads, generally speaking. In situations like this, it may be worth kind of looking at the surrounding job description, the description of the role, to see what they might prioritise. And additionally, use your knowledge in the area or role to determine kind of what the priorities will be. Job descriptions are often quite ambiguous. So for the example I used earlier was excellent communication skills. Now, this can mean something different to everyone, and it doesn't describe what is actually required for the role. So does the role involve, presenting to large groups of people like this, or do they simply want someone who can kind of communicate work updates to their colleagues on kind of regular Teams meetings, for example? And this ambiguity of job ads is something a lot of our consultants that we work with say was kind of the hardest part of their job hunting experience. And it really is complex. Although kind of employers are generally getting better, there is still kind of a lot of work to do. So don't be too hard on yourself if you do find kind of the process of job hunting and trying to decode these job ads to be a bit draining. I was recently on a training session with a organisation in Scotland, and we were going through some of their own job ads, and one was really, really ambiguous, and they kind of were saying they done that on purpose. They made it ambiguous on purpose because the role itself was quite ambiguous. So it was just kind of in picking ways that they could kind of help to make that less ambiguous and really just make it clear to those applying what is actually essential for the role. So if you find that kind of the list of skills is too generic or ambiguous and you aren't sure kind of what they really mean, it really is okay to ask for more information. If the contact details have been provided, open up the conversation and really get clarification on the priorities of the role and kind of what the day-to-day will look like. It might be helpful to break down the job descriptions into your own words, on a separate document in a format that works for you, and really take your knowledge of the area and the information that they've given you to highlight kind of priority skills, and then you can start matching. So just before we move on, I've included kind of an example of good practices, and this is actually kind of what you'll see on Autocon's website. Now, as you can see, the list of essential criteria is kept short, and it's clearly stated that if you meet kind of 3 out of 4, we would like to hear from you. Additionally, we have added some kind of nice to haves. Everything is quite clear and specific, and the focus really is on technical ability applicable to the role. And you might also see this set out in some other job adverts in terms of kind of essential and desirable criteria, which is also good practice. But remember, if the list of essential criteria is very long, it really is unlikely that they will be able to find one person who has everything that they're looking for. So try not and be put off by this. I'll hand you back over to Sharon to go into kind of that skills matching process.
Thanks very much, Hayley. So hopefully we've given you some ideas now about how you can start to build up a really good record of your own skills and get that clearer understanding of what skills are really being asked for in employers' job adverts. So the final stage then is to really just look for the overlap. So which of your skills match what the employer seems to be looking for? So by this stage, you should have 2 clear listings. You've got your comprehensive list of all of your skills and what you have to offer. And then you've also unpicked from the job advert what the employer is really looking for. So it's just a case of looking for the common ground. So that's step 3, the skills match. So some top tips as you approach this matching process. I guess one of the key things to emphasize here is not to get too focused on the specific details or looking for really exact matches. If you've noted that you've got creative writing skills, for example, and the job advert asks for strong writing skills, that would be a match. So when you identify a match, you should also think about how you demonstrate that your skill is the same as what is being asked for by the employer in the job advert. So you can do that by reframing your skill or using the same language that the employer has used. That can be really helpful. So just remember, it's not enough for you to realize that what they're looking for and the skills that you have are a match. You need to clearly show that they are a match. So another example here, if your skill set lies in excellent written communication, for example, your strength might be in formulating written reports, then a job asking for strong presentation skills to large cohorts might not be as good a fit, as this would really require quite strong verbal communication skills, obviously. So that's an example of where there's not a match. The last area is where you're not 100% sure if there is a match or not. And sometimes it can be pretty hard to judge whether it is a match. So for example, here we've got that your skill is 2 years experience in Google Analytics, and what's been asked for as an essential is 3 years of experience in Google Analytics. So it may seem on the surface initially that that's not a match and you don't meet that criteria, but I would urge you not to rule yourself out at that point, because if you think about it, what the employer is really likely asking for by saying 3 years of experience in Google Analytics is somebody who has significant experience. They want somebody who can show that they're a regular user who's really comfortable with the software. So there's potential that you can meet that by explaining how you have used Google Analytics over the last 2 years and emphasizing your strong competency in that. So just be aware of those areas where it's slightly grey area, and be aware not to rule yourself out too quickly. So the other thing to keep in mind at this point when you're doing this matching process, trying to look for the overlap, is putting yourself in the shoes of the recruiter, thinking about who is going to be looking at this application that you're putting in. So the recruiter is likely, they've got their list of skills, they're likely looking at this list of skills, and they're looking at the applications coming through, and they are trying to see where the evidence is that each application matches the skills that they're looking for. So if you reflect their own language back at them, or you use bullet points, for example, to really pick out the essential criteria and how you're a match for those, you're just making that recruiter's job a bit easier. You're making it easier for them to say, yep, they definitely tick everything we're looking for. We'll progress them to the next stage. So if you have a skill that is a match, just make it as easy as possible for the recruiter to tick that box. So conversely, make sure you're not hiding really important skills in the middle of a long paragraph where it might be overlooked by the recruiter. And then another top tip to bear in mind is just to try to avoid talking too much about skills that you don't think are really that relevant for this particular role. So after having come up with your long list of skills and experience at stage one, I understand the temptation might be that you want to demonstrate as much of that as possible. But if you add in lots of skills that aren't as relevant to the role, you're kind of diluting your application. You're making it harder for the recruiter to see the more relevant skills and experience. So do try to keep it as focused as possible. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't add in some things that haven't been asked for. Definitely feel confident to do that, particularly if there's skills you're proud of, or particularly if you are autistic or neurodivergent and you want to mention some of the skills that come with your profile, like Hayley mentioned. That's a great chance to do it. But just make sure that you are relating it to this particular application. So remember, as an applicant, the onus is on you to explain to the recruiter in a way that makes them see the relevance to the role that they're recruiting for. So hopefully this three-stage process that we've gone through, step 1, skills audit, step 2, skills decoding, and step 3, skills match, is all making sense to you, and you feel like you understand how you could use it to approach the job hunting process with a bit more confidence. So far we've been focusing specifically on skills and job adverts and applications, but we did want to share a few other tips with you that was just around asking for adjustments and looking for a supportive employer that should also help you feel more confident about job hunting if you are autistic or neurodivergent in particular. So over to Hayley to talk a bit about reasonable adjustments.
Thanks. So it really is important to know that reasonable adjustments aren't just something that you may be entitled to once you are employed. They really are something that you may be entitled to throughout the entirety of the recruitment process. If you just go on to the next slide, please, Sharon. So we've put some examples kind of on the slide now, and again, this is by no means exhaustive. There might be something on there that would be helpful for you, or you may kind of think of something that might be helpful that's not on there, and that might be absolutely fine all the same. But in terms of this kind of list that we've got, so you are able to kind of request things like visiting the location of the interview to really familiarise yourself with the environment, as well as kind of requesting your interview be held in kind of a quiet room, away from distractions, or even requesting kind of a remote interview, should this be preferable to yourself. Things like kind of feeling comfortable taking notes into the interview, or asking for kind of clear deadlines, and then really inform them that you may need kind of that additional processing time throughout the interview can be really, really helpful. You can also request things like getting an agenda to be sent over in advance for the kind of recruitment process, as well as the interview. So it can be helpful to ask for the interview questions in advance, for example, so that you can better prepare your answers, or kind of ask for a question to be rephrased prior to going into the interview. A lot of the time, employers sadly don't feel comfortable always given kind of interview questions in advance, but often they may be able to give you questions in advance, even if it's just kind of like an hour prior to your interview time. So you just get a little bit of additional processing time prior to going into the interview. Other employers, might be happy to send you on the questions kind of a week in advance. It really just depends on the employer that you're interviewing for. We do think, feedback is always important. So it can be helpful to ask the recruiter to give you feedback on your application in an interview, so you can really develop these skills as well. If you have a preferred method of communication as well following the interview, as in, would you feel more comfortable kind of discussing the next steps via email, or would you prefer to do it over the phone? Whatever your preferences are, let the recruiter know so that they can contact you in a way that suits you best. And it really can be scary to disclose to a potential employer, but this does give them a chance to support you to do your best. It allows you to kind of navigate the recruitment process in a more supportive way, really letting you kind of focus on your strengths, as opposed to worrying about all of the other kind of external factors. And this also means that should you be successful in getting the job, this conversation around adjustments and support has already started, and you can continue this conversation throughout your time with them, really allowing you to be supported in the workplace through adjustments as well. Now, we've put a little bit about how to kind of identify a supportive company. Any supportive employer will happily implement those adjustments for you and make kind of not only the recruitment process more inclusive, but your time with that organisation more inclusive as a whole as well. But how do we identify kind of a supportive company? There is a lot of things that you can look for when searching for kind of a neurodivergent friendly employer, or just a supportive employer in general for those that have joined us that aren't neurodivergent. So things like kind of, do they have an equity statement? Is their website and job spec accessible? Do they promote kind of the values of neurodiversity on their website? Do your research, study their website, look at their social media channels, look at their LinkedIn in particular, kind of what content are they sharing and who kind of are they employing, as this can help kind of get a well-rounded view of things. Are they a disability confident employer? For those that don't know, Disability Confident is a government scheme designed to kind of encourage employers to recruit and retain disabled people and those that come with other health conditions. A disability confident employer will encourage disabled people to really apply for all vacancies and support them when they do. So specialist job sites can be a useful place to find a disability confident employer, such as Careers with Disabilities, Employability, and Even Break. It's also good to kind of highlight what employee benefits they're offering. Are these highlighted in the job ads? Are they using neuro-inclusive language? Additionally, kind of throughout the process, the recruitment process, think about, is there an opportunity to disclose on the application form, or a point of contact provided to disclose to in advance of applying, or when kind of submitting your application, or when you're thinking about, the recruitment and interview process? How does the employer kind of communicate during the application process and disclosure process? And do they kind of show signs, I suppose, of awareness and understanding? Has the employer put your adjustments into place in advance of the interview? So, for example, getting questions ahead of time, as well as kind of, are they putting reasonable adjustments into place on the day? There's also things like kind of alternative offers to the traditional sit-down interview, such as asking to showcase your skills with a technical exercise, for example, that might be better suited to you. Also think about the interview process as an opportunity for you to ask them questions and get to know them as an organization. You know, you can ask questions about how kind of inclusive and aware their environment is. Are they offering things like hybrid working, for example? And are they just generally showing kind of awareness and understanding in the way that they interact with you? As I say, the interview is as much an opportunity for you to get to know them as it is for them to get to know you. So really don't be afraid to ask questions, for example, about their culture, environment, support, and flexibility in these interviews. I'll pass back over to Sharon.
Thanks, Hayley. So since we're talking about neurodivergent friendly employers, then I thought it'd be good to talk a bit about our process, because as you would expect, out of many of the things that Hayley's just been talking about, we implement those here at Auticon. So first of all, we do try to keep the essential criteria on our job adverts as short and clear as possible. So hopefully if you do look at our website, you will see that in our job adverts. And step one for us is just about, do you meet our criteria? So have you understood what we're looking for, and have you understood that for us, the consultants that we hire are autistic? So it's a simple uploading CV. There's no complex questions. So that gets you started on the recruitment journey. Our next stage is online assessments. So we ask people to complete a really simple skills self-assessment form to get a better idea of people's IT skills in terms of which languages they use, which platforms, data tools they've had experience of. We then follow that up with two types of online assessments. So we have a cognitive assessment and a technical assessment. And these are assessments that people can do at home in their own time. And we send really clear instructions about how to complete those and what to expect, so that people can go into them feeling well prepared. And also you're in direct contact with our HR person at that point. So you've got a kind of named contact you can be asking clarification questions to. So it feels quite low key and personal. And this stage is all about us just getting a better understanding of the applicant's strengths, so that we can start to think about how they might be placed with our clients on different projects and what they'd be suited to, the types of projects they'd be suited to. So we can start to think ahead to, if we were to employ this person, where would we place them, with which client, and what would they be doing? Step three is a continuation of that, really, but that's where we bring in some virtual conversations, and these are informal, normally on Teams, and we can flex the timing around applicants. They can be audio only if that's the preference. There's no dress code. We're obviously not assessing things like eye contact. We just want candidates to feel as relaxed as possible in those conversations, so that we can get to know the real person. And again, we're using those conversations just to better understand people's technical skills, their strengths, and the types of reasonable adjustments and support that they might benefit from to allow them to thrive in the role. And again, we want people to feel prepared, so we give our applicants information on the topics that are going to be covered in both of those virtual chats. Step four is where we think it's important to start meeting in person. So we do offer a chance for applicants to come into either our London or Edinburgh office and meet some of the broader Auticon team. And that again is intended to be an informal conversation, a chance to see the office and get some practical questions answered. The next stage would typically be an offer, and the way Auticon works as a consultancy means that there could be a slight delay while we line up somebody's first client project, as we like to have that in place before we offer the permanent contract of employment. So you may have noticed throughout this four-step process that we've not mentioned interviews. So we don't do traditional interviews. We also don't do the type of competency-based questions that you might have encountered before, things like, tell me about a time when you overcame a challenge within a team. So we don't ask you to write a long covering letter either, telling us why you're the best candidate for the job. Our process is all about creating an environment whereby, going through the process, you get a chance to show us your skills and your experience and your potential. And it gives us time to learn more about you and you time to learn more about us. So definitely that two-way process that Hayley mentioned earlier. Yeah, so just quickly, the roles that we recruit for. This is available on our website, so you can have a look there, but I'll just quickly talk a bit through it just to give a quick overview. If there are any autistic people on the call that might be interested in applying to us. So we recruit at various points throughout the year, and when we're not actively recruiting, we operate a talent pool, so people can register to join our talent pool to stay in the loop about future opportunities as well. But essentially, what we're normally recruiting for is data analysts, data scientists, or data engineers, and we're looking for people who have got strong Python or R skills, experience of data analysis tools, if they're able to process large data sets accurately and have experience of using relational databases. And you only need to meet 3 out of 4 of those criteria for us to consider you. We recruit for our Edinburgh and London offices, and we offer permanent contracts. And we recruit at 3 different levels: associate, consultant, and senior consultant. And we're transparent about our salary scales. About our salary scales, and you can find those on our job adverts. But for the whole range, it's between 24 to 50,000, but smaller scales for the associate consultant and senior consultants. Generally, Autocon's all about offering a supportive and friendly environment, and a big benefit of working with us is the support of our job coaching service, which just really supports our consultants to thrive in their role. And that's Hayley's job. So she is an excellent example of that support that is available to our consultants. So you can find out more on our website, which is listed there. And as I mentioned, the way we work as a consultancy means that hiring is dependent on client demand. So there are times where we are taking the applicants through our process quite quickly, and there are times where we pause people and maybe consider the talent pool to hold people there for a while. It just depends on the demand from our clients. And finally, just before we move on to questions, I just thought we'd finish with a couple of quotes that we collected when we were putting this session together from 2 of our consultants who gave us their thoughts on the recruitment process and what they found difficult. Hayley mentioned this earlier. So Brodie said that ambiguous language is the one thing that he had the most trouble with when applying for jobs. Didn't really give him a clear picture of the reality of the job, and he would suggest always getting a second opinion on what something is trying to say. And then Irina said that when there's a long list of responsibilities, she likes to break it down into sections and split it by ones she can do and ones she might not be so sure about. Then she'll go and do a research on the ones she's not so sure about and note down further questions about each item. So it's just breaking that down further, as we discussed earlier. So that's the presentation that we had for you finished. So I think we'll move on to any questions. I think Stephen has maybe been keeping an eye on the questions in the chat for us. So I'll see if he wants to come in at this point.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks very much. There's a lot there for people to take away, I think. We've got some questions here. The first one that's come in is, hi, when checking job descriptions, everything is matching to my skills, but the years of experience don't match up. They want a lot more experience than I have. The question is, should I apply anyway?
Yes, I think I covered that. You might have put the question in before I got to that point, but generally, you could look at it as it's a bit of a lazy way for employers to write their job descriptions. They're using the number of years of experience as a proxy for trying to tell you how experienced they want somebody to be in that particular skill or application or a piece of software. So if you feel that you've maybe not got quite enough experience in terms of calendar time and to match what they're asking for, but you know that it's maybe something that you've used on a daily basis for 2 years, but they're asking for 3 years. But by saying 3 years, they don't really know how often you used it within that 3-year period. So it doesn't really give a full picture. So I think definitely don't let the arbitrary number put you off. Still apply, but make a point of acknowledging that I know you were asking for 3 years of experience. I've actually got 2 years of experience, but I've done X, Y, and Z within that time. I'm a really competent user. So you're demonstrating that you still are meeting what they're looking for.
Brilliant, thank you. And just a reminder, if you do have any questions, just to pop them in the Q&A and we'll get to them. So this is a question from an employer, and they said, I'm an employer looking to make sure that my recruitment process is more inclusive. Is there any sort of standard steps or kind of step-by-step guidance on how I can ensure that neurodivergent people are made to feel welcome? And I think you'd mentioned you'd mentioned a kind of certification, I think, as well.
Yeah, Hayley, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, employers can kind of apply for, well, to become a part of kind of a disability confidence scheme, which is something that they can kind of highlight on their website. But in terms of making kind of the recruitment process more inclusive, I think the main thing is get feedback on your recruitment process as a whole and think about ways that you can make that, I think, less ambiguous and more certain can be really helpful. So things like when we chatted through kind of our job ads and examples, you know, having kind of 11 essential bullet points of criteria that people need to match. It isn't inclusive. It's really hard, specifically for kind of autistic individuals. Can find it hard to apply for a job if they don't match that job 100%. They just kind of write themselves off quite early on in that process. And I think one kind of key point of advice that one of our consultants gave when we were kind of asking them about this session was to not write yourself off too soon. So that's one thing that employers can really do to help. And kind of the second key bit I would say is that when you're going through the application process, kind of make it clear that there's a point of contact for applicants to contact and reach out to discuss reasonable adjustments. Just kind of highlighting this as a conversation and opening that up to people can really help, because it can be quite scary going to an employer while you're going through the recruitment process to ask for things. So if you as an employer are given that opportunity to all people kind of coming through that process, that can really, really help to start that conversation off.
Brilliant, thank you. So this next question is from someone who's asking, how much time would you recommend spending on an application? I've in the past sent lots of applications with no response, but then I find tailoring my application to every potential job is very time consuming. Is there like a recommended amount of time you would recommend?
I don't think there's an arbitrary kind of time limit for how long you should spend per application, but as the question kind of alludes to, it is a bit of a balancing act. So generally, the advice would be that you are better doing fewer applications and tailoring them as much as possible. But I appreciate, as the person's asked, that does take a bit longer. But it is generally better to do a more tailored application than think about how many applications you can get out there. I guess the process that we've talked through today is designed to kind of speed things up for you as well. So if you've done the step one where you've done your skills audit of yourself and you've got this documentation and you're maybe adding to that constantly each application that you do, you've got it's kind of a bit of a pick and mix situation. Then you're looking at the job advert, you're thinking, okay, this one it's really important that I emphasize X, Y, and Z. Where have I got that on my list of skills? I've got it here. So it should start to speed up the process for you if you're using this kind of three-step approach that we've outlined today as you start to build up more and more evidence. So it should hopefully get a little bit quicker, but there's no kind of magic answer to that, I don't think, unless Hayley has one that I'm not aware of.
No, unfortunately not, but I think you answered that question quite well. I think if you have kind of a baseline of your skills, then it makes it, as Sharon said, kind of a quicker process to kind of edit the skills on your CV or application to fit more closely to the specific job ad that you're applying for.
Brilliant, thank you. So the next question somebody's asking, and you might have touched on this, but do you need a diagnosis to be able to ask for reasonable adjustments throughout the process?
So reasonable adjustments are part of kind of the Equality Act, and you would kind of need kind of some sort of diagnosis legally, but a lot of employers probably wouldn't require a specific diagnosis to be able to implement some of these reasonable adjustments. I think a lot of kind of our consultants, in terms of their kind of previous experience, they might have been kind of waiting for a diagnosis, and that's something that a lot of people need to take into consideration at the minute, that wait lists for an autism diagnosis are incredibly long. There's large expense that comes with getting a private diagnosis to kind of hurry that process up. I suppose I would say getting that diagnosis and starting that process would stand you in kind of a more confident position when asking for things like reasonable adjustments. But if they are an inclusive employer, they should be able to kind of implement some of these things without that.
Thank you. And the last question that's come in is from Sam, and they said they missed the content of step 3. I think they're talking about your recruitment process at Auticon. They missed the content of step 3, and we're wondering what type of questions would they probably be asked at that stage?
So step 3 is our virtual conversations. So that's where you would maybe get some conversation, probably with the technical director. It would be one of, so there's 2 conversations, sorry. The conversation with the technical team, where you're concentrating more on, you know, talking about what kind of projects have you worked on before, what kind of software or technology do you really enjoy, what would you like to be doing more of in the future, but in a very kind of conversational way. It's not that it's you know, somebody will ask you a question, you're expected to be able to produce a long, wonderful answer. You know, we'll prompt you, we'll ask follow-up questions, we'll support you to get that information from you. So it's not a performance, I guess, is what we're trying to do with those conversations. So that's the technical one. So it's more about, yeah, your technical skills and what you enjoy doing, what you'd like to do more of in the future. The other conversation is with the job coaching team, and that's where you would start to explore what kind of support you might need in the role, and what supports you would benefit from, what reasonable adjustments you might need from us, Auticon, as your employer, and what you might need from the clients that we place you with as well. So starting to think about how we could support you, and we give you some example scenarios to frame those conversations. So an example, and you would get this in an email beforehand when we're arranging the time with you, so you'd have it all written down in advance. But an example, just to share with you, would be that we might say, as part of the conversation, we'll discuss the following scenario. You were due to start working with a client on Monday. It's Friday afternoon, and the client has just told us there's been a delay and you can't start now. How would you feel about that? And we'd explore how you would deal with that with the job coaching team in that conversation. So it's kind of a practical example of some scenarios that might come up when you're working with Auticon, that would allow us to open up the conversation about how you work best and how we could support you.
Brilliant, thank you. So that's us got through all the questions. So thank you both for joining us. There was loads there that I'm sure people can take away, and hopefully it'll make their job hunting experience a little bit easier for them. If people want to get in touch with you, obviously your email addresses are on the screen at the moment. If anybody has any more questions, are you happy for people to contact you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're both in the community as well. So if you're not in the community, for people watching and you want to join, then we definitely recommend it. We do regular events, and there's loads of opportunities for kind of getting support and connecting with other people working in data and AI. So yeah, I think after that we're done. So thank you very much, and see you all next time.
Thanks so
everyone.
much. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for hosting, Stephen.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.